Most people think the butter aisle is the one place in the grocery store where you can't really get fooled. It's butter, it's cream, it's salt. What could possibly be hiding in there? A lot, it turns out. Some of the biggest names on that shelf are sitting right at the legal minimum for what's allowed to even be called butter, and they're charging you like they're not. Others aren't butter at all. They just look like it, sit next to it, and let your brain fill in the rest. And a couple of them are hiding something in the ingredient list that has nothing to do with cows and everything to do with a chemical solvent you've probably never heard of. We went through the labels, not the marketing copy on the front. The actual back-of-package ingredient panel, the one most people glance at for half a second before tossing the tub in the cart. Every claim in this video comes straight from what's printed on the packaging itself, cross-checked against the labeling standards that actually govern what's allowed to be called butter, margarine, or a spread in this country. That distinction matters more than most shoppers realize, because the rules are looser than you'd expect. A product can sit at the absolute legal floor for fat content and still print the word butter across the front in the same confident type as a brand that's well above it. A product can be built almost entirely from water and oil and still occupy the same shelf, the same price range, sometimes the same brand family, as something genuinely made from cream. Nothing about that is hidden exactly. It's just written in a way that assumes you won't check. Today we're ranking 13 brands you should think twice about before you buy again, working from bad to genuinely bad. And once we're through the avoid list, we'll get into the 6 that are the real thing, from the reliable everyday workhorse to the one jar that's worth every extra dollar. Let's get into it. Number 13. Kroger Butter. Store brands live and die on one promise: same product, lower price, no reason to spend more. For a lot of grocery categories, that promise actually holds up. Butter is where it starts to crack. Kroger's butter sits at the same 80% milk fat floor as the cheapest options in the case, and there's nothing printed anywhere on the label to suggest the milk behind it came from anywhere particular or from cows raised any particular way. No pasture claim, no breed information, no RBST-free pledge. Even though, just like with some of the other store brands on this list, the milk sold 2 shelves over from the same retailer often carries exactly that pledge. That inconsistency should tell you something. The company knows shoppers care enough about RBST to put it on a milk carton. It just hasn't decided butter buyers deserve the same disclosure. Texture-wise, it behaves exactly the way an 80% flour product behaves. Firm and unyielding straight from the fridge, a little waxy once it softens, missing the fuller mouthfeel that comes with real pasture-fed cream. The flavor is inoffensive in the way flavorless things are inoffensive. It won't ruin your toast. It also won't do anything for it. For a retailer this size, doing better wouldn't require some enormous leap. It would just require deciding butter buyers are worth the same standard as milk buyers, and right now, that decision hasn't been made. Number 12. Fleischmann's. Fleischmann's has been in kitchens since the early 20th century, originally marketed on the idea that switching from butter to margarine was the responsible, heart-conscious choice. That pitch worked for decades, and a lot of people never really questioned it. The ingredient list underneath that reputation is soybean oil, water, salt, and a rotating cast of emulsifiers and preservatives, along with the usual natural and artificial flavor line doing its usual job of telling you nothing. There's no dairy anywhere in the formula, which is fine on its own. Plenty of honest plant-based spreads exist, except Fleischmann still leans on decades-old health messaging that was built around a specific claim: that swapping out saturated animal fat for vegetable oil was an unambiguous win for your heart. The nutrition science underneath that idea has gotten considerably more complicated since those ads first ran, and the brand has never really updated the pitch to reflect it. Taste-wise, it's soft, a little greasy, and carries a flat vegetable oil aftertaste that lingers longer than you'd want. It melts unevenly in a pan, pooling oil faster than butter would, which is a small tell that the fat structure here isn't doing what butterfat does. None of this makes Fleischmann's dangerous. It just means a brand built entirely on a decades-old health argument hasn't done much to earn your trust beyond that argument, and the ingredient list underneath it isn't nearly as clean as the old commercials implied. Number 11. Land O'Lakes. This one's going to surprise people because Land O'Lakes moves more butter than almost anyone else in the country, hundreds of millions of units a year, and the core stick butter, the plain yellow box you've probably had in your fridge at some point, does what butter is supposed to do. That's not the problem. The problem is that Land O'Lakes isn't really one product. It's a whole lineup, and the lineup is where things start to unravel. The butter with canola spreads exist because regular butter is a pain straight out of the fridge. It tears the bread. It won't spread. A canola blend stays soft at 40 degrees, and that convenience is real. Nobody's arguing otherwise. But that canola oil has a background most shoppers never hear about. It's routinely extracted using hexane, an industrial solvent used to strip oil out of seeds efficiently at scale. The trace amounts that survive into the final product are small. Regulators consider them acceptable. What nobody can tell you is what decades of low-level, everyday hexane exposure actually does. Because that study doesn't exist. Nobody's run it. The label certainly isn't going to bring it up. Then there's the light version. Read that ingredient list and you'll find modified food starch, mono and diglycerides, potassium sorbate, xanthan gum, artificial and natural flavor, all doing the work that used to belong to cream. Real butter is 2 ingredients. This is closer to a chemistry set with fewer calories attached to it. Fewer calories doesn't automatically mean better. It just means something else moved in to fill the space that fat left behind. Number 10. Breakstones. Breakstones has been making butter in New York since the 1880s, and for a long stretch it held a lane nobody else could touch. It was the only widely available certified kosher butter on the market. For a lot of families, that mattered enormously, and there's nothing wrong with that. But kosher certification is about religious compliance. It says nothing about what the cows ate, how the cream was handled, or what the butter actually tastes like. And once you open a tub of Breakstones unsalted, that gap becomes obvious fast. It's pale, almost white. Real butter gets its golden color from beta-carotene in grass, which means grass-fed cows. A near-white butter is telling you, without saying a word, that these cows were mostly grain-fed indoors. Grain-fed milk makes flatter, blander butter, and you can taste exactly that here. Then something strange happens. You're eating unsalted butter, and there's a tang to it that has no business being there. Look at the label and you'll find the explanation buried in 2 words: natural flavors. No further detail required by law. Brands can hide almost anything behind that phrase, and whatever Breakstones is using is adding a note your taste buds never asked for. It still owns its corner of the kosher aisle. Outside of that specific need, there isn't much reason to reach for it. Number 9. Great Value Butter from Walmart. At a genuinely low price per pound with a USDA Grade A stamp on the box, this one looks like the obvious smart choice. Real butter, real grading, hard to argue with on the surface. Then, you learn about RBST. It's a synthetic growth hormone used to push dairy cows to produce more milk than their bodies would naturally make. The European Union has banned it, so has Canada, so has Australia, so has the UK. The reason isn't some abstract purity concern. RBST use is directly linked to mastitis, a painful udder infection, and to lameness in the cows producing that milk. Most of the developed world looked at that trade-off and decided the extra yield wasn't worth the damage. In the US, it's still legal, and Great Value Butter carries no RBST-free claim anywhere on the label. Here's the part that actually stings. Walk 2 aisles over, grab Great Value milk from the same store, and you'll see an RBST-free pledge printed right on that carton. Same retailer, same house brand, 2 completely different standards depending on which dairy case you're standing in front of. A shopper who carefully picks the RBST-free milk and then grabs the butter next to it has no idea those 2 products were never held to the same rule. And if you go for the canola oil spread version instead, there's another layer. Added color and canola oil dull the flavor and leave a faintly artificial aftertaste that doesn't belong anywhere near toast. Multiple shoppers have also reported opening tubs that come up noticeably short of their labeled weight, more air pocket than actual spread. You're not just buying a lower standard, you may be buying less of it too. Number 8. Brumel and Brown. This is the one dressed up as the responsible choice. Real yogurt, 0 trans fat, clean pastel packaging that practically whispers, "This is the smart swap." Someone trying to eat a little better could walk right into this thinking they've made an upgrade. Flip the tub around and it says so right there in small print. Vegetable oil spread, not butter, not margarine, a spread, and that distinction is a legal one. Butter needs at least 80% fat from milk. Margarine needs to hit that same threshold using vegetable oil instead. Brumel and Brown sits at roughly a third of that, nowhere near either category. And that yogurt the front of the package leans on so heavily? It's a minor piece of the actual formula, well behind the top two ingredients, purified water and soybean oil. The yogurt shows up further down the list, after palm oil and a string of stabilizers. The ingredient doing all the marketing work is nowhere near the top of the actual list. What you're buying is a water and oil emulsion wearing a health halo. Number 7. I can't believe it's not butter. You almost have to respect the marketing here, even while it's working against you. Put the word butter in giant letters on the front of a package, and that's the word your brain locks onto. The "I can't believe it's not" part functions like fine print, even printed in the same size font. Older versions of this product listed something close to half its content as vegetable oils, right there on the label. That detail has quietly disappeared from newer packaging, even though the basic formula hasn't changed much. What's left is a product built primarily on water and oil, and it tastes like exactly that. Thin, a little slick, missing the richness that only comes from actual cream. The cooking spray version deserves its own mention. It's been the subject of legal complaints over its 0 calories per spray claim. That claim is technically allowed because regulators let companies round down to 0 if a single serving, defined as a fraction of a second spray, contains under 5 calories. Nobody cooks with a fraction of a second spray. Use it the way people actually use it, and a full bottle adds up to hundreds of calories and a real amount of fat. The name on the box tells you exactly what this isn't. It's just betting you won't think about it too hard. Before we get to the back half of this list, here's something you can actually use standing in the aisle, no research required. Flip the package over and look at two things. First, the percentage. If the front says butter and the back doesn't clearly show at least 80% milk fat, or shows a lower number dressed up as a spread or a blend, you're not looking at butter no matter what the front implies. Second, count the ingredients. Real butter has one job and needs almost nothing to do it. Cream, salt if it's salted, done. The moment you see gums, mono, and diglycerides, or natural flavor doing unexplained work in a product that's supposed to be simple, that's the label quietly admitting the fat content couldn't get the job done on its own. Keep those two checks in mind, and the rest of this list is going to make a lot more sense. Number 6. Parquet. If you remember the old commercials where the tub of spread talked and insisted it was butter, you remember exactly how effective that campaign was. It convinced an entire generation that Parquet was somehow in the same category as the real thing. It wasn't then. It isn't now. Parquet is built primarily on soybean oil, palm oil, and palm kernel oil, bound together with a standard list of preservatives. The detail worth sitting with is the flavoring, natural and artificial flavors, listed with 0 further specification as usual. Artificial flavor compounds are frequently built from petrochemical starting points, and there's no meaningful long-term research tracking what regular consumption of those specific compounds does over years. That's simply not information you're going to find on the box. The squeeze bottle version raises the stakes slightly, built on soybean oil and hydrogenated cottonseed oil. Cotton is a textile crop first, not a food crop, and it's among the most heavily pesticide-treated crops grown anywhere. Refining strips out most of what was applied to it. Most isn't all, and there's no long-term study on what regular cottonseed oil consumption does to the body over time. Every squeeze is a small bet on an unknown. Real butter never asks you to make that bet. Number 5. Blue Bonnet. Blue Bonnet started out as an honest, affordable stand-in for butter back when butter genuinely was a luxury item for a lot of American families. That era is long gone, and what carries the name today is a spread sitting well under the margarine threshold. Not margarine, not butter, not close to either. For decades, the formula relied on partially hydrogenated soybean oil, which is to say, industrial trans fat, the kind directly and repeatedly linked to heart disease. The FDA eventually forced a reformulation across the entire industry, and Blue Bonnet changed only because it had to, not because it wanted to get ahead of the science. Today, the brand advertises less fat and cholesterol than butter, which is technically true and conveniently avoids the follow-up question, replaced with what? a combination of artificial preservatives that can upset digestion and, in sensitive people, trigger respiratory symptoms. One of those preservatives, sodium benzoate, has shown up in research linked to increased hyperactivity in children. A parent grabbing this off the shelf as the budget-friendly, harmless option isn't necessarily getting the full picture. A brand that sold a cardiovascular risk for decades and only backed off when the law required it tells you a lot about where its priorities actually sit. Number 4. Smart Balance. Smart Balance might be running the boldest health pitch of anything in this category. Heart-healthy fats, omega-3s, low trans fat. It reads like it was formulated with a cardiologist standing over the vat. Look closer, and that pitch starts to fall apart. Start with the omega-3 number printed proudly on the front. Most people see omega-3 and think of the kind found in fish, the DHA and EPA, backed by decades of cardiovascular research. What's actually in this tub is ALA, a plant-based omega-3 that the body has to convert into DHA and EPA, and it does that conversion badly. The amount here isn't going to move any real cardiovascular needle even under ideal conditions. If you actually want omega-3s your heart benefits from, walnuts, chia, or hemp seeds get you there in a bigger, cheaper, more usable dose. And what is this product really? Buttery spread is a legal category that requires exactly 0% butter. Smart Balance sits at roughly 60% vegetable oil, well under the 80% fat floor that would even let it call itself margarine. It's not margarine, it's not butter. It's a spread wrapped in language borrowed from real nutrition science, deployed in a way that's technically defensible and practically misleading. Someone buys this specifically believing it's protecting their heart. That belief isn't really supported by what's in the tub. Number 3. Country Crock. Country Crock sells warmth. The barn on the label, the word churned, the sense that you're buying something with a little heritage behind it. Open the ingredient list and that feeling evaporates fast. Start with the plant-based lines because this is where the brand has drawn real pushback. Consumers have taken issue with the plant-based butter built around olive oil, arguing that olive oil is the entire selling point on the front of the package, the ingredient that justifies the price, while actually making up a small fraction of the formula. The bulk of it comes from cheaper oils, soybean, canola, palm kernel, palm, with the premium ingredient sitting mostly on the label rather than in the tub. The avocado oil version follows the identical playbook. Industry groups, including dairy trade organizations, have formally pushed back on the use of the word butter on products that contain no dairy at all. Butter is a dairy product by definition. A vegetable oil blend isn't, and it's hard to argue the labeling doesn't blur that line on purpose. As for the original Country Crock, the version that's been sitting in refrigerators for generations, it now sits well under the margarine threshold, a vegetable oil spread and nothing more. And here's the detail that says the most about how this brand thinks about you as a shopper. That percentage is printed in pale green text against a green background. You'd have to be actively hunting for it to find it. What your eye actually lands on is the barn and the word churned. Number 2. Imperial. Imperial has existed in one form or another for decades, and every version has been a letdown. The current one is the clearest example yet of what happens when a brand stops pretending to compete in the category it's technically sold in. It's labeled as a vegetable oil spread, sitting at a fraction of the fat that would make it credible even by that lower bar. It's nowhere near margarine, nowhere near butter. Most of what's inside a tub of Imperial is purified water. No cream, no dairy, none. You're buying an emulsified mixture of oil and water dressed up to look like something you'd want on toast, and at this price point, that's not really a surprise. It's the honest math of what a few dollars buys you in this category. The gap between what it is and what it implies becomes very obvious the moment it hits your tongue. It sits flat. It leaves an oily film that doesn't clear, which is exactly what happens when there isn't enough fat to bind the water and oil properly. People will keep buying it because budgets are real. At least now you know what that price is actually buying. Number 1. Challenge. This one earns the top spot precisely because it doesn't look like it belongs there. Clean California dairy branding, a price that sits just under what you'd pay for anything premium. It feels like a smart, unremarkable choice, the kind nobody thinks twice about. Here's the thing. In the US, a product needs at least 80% milk fat to legally be called butter. That's the floor, not a target. Challenge sits right on that line, not a point above it. That's not an accident. That's a cost decision dressed up as a normal one, and you feel it the second you try to cut a cold stick straight from the fridge. It resists. When it finally gives, it drags instead of gliding. The flavor tells the same story. Nothing wrong with it exactly, nothing particularly there either. It tastes like the outline of butter with the actual substance missing. The unsalted version markets itself specifically for baking, and that's where the gap matters most. Butter is supposed to lift a recipe. Bake a batch of cookies with this, and the result comes out flat and forgettable. As a background ingredient, sure, it does the job. The moment butter is supposed to be the whole point, this one quietly lets you down. A minimum standard product sitting at a price that pretends to be more. Now that you know what to steer away from, here are the 6 that actually earn a spot in your fridge. Best option number 6, Organic Valley. Organic Valley is a farmer-owned cooperative rather than a single corporate brand, which changes the incentive structure in a way that actually shows up in the product. The cows are certified organic and pasture-raised for a meaningful portion of the year, and the co-op structure means the farmers producing the milk have a direct stake in the quality of what leaves the farm, not just the volume. The butter itself sits comfortably above the 80% floor, and the ingredient list is exactly what you want to see: cream and salt, if you buy the salted version. No natural flavor doing quiet, undisclosed work. No stabilizers. The color runs a warm, believable yellow rather than the near white you get from some of the grain-fed brands on the avoid list, and the taste is clean, a little grassy, without any of the tang or waxiness that shows up when milk fat is running right at the legal minimum. It sits in the middle of the pack, price-wise, more than a store brand, less than the boutique European imports, which makes it one of the easier upgrades a regular shopper can make without changing their weekly grocery budget much at all. Best option number 5. Vital Farms. Most brands hit that 80% milk fat line and stop right there. Vital Farms doesn't. Their butter typically runs a few points above the floor, and that extra fat shows up in everything it touches. The cows are largely grass-fed, and the breeds chosen, Jersey and Guernsey rather than the standard Holstein most commercial dairies rely on, naturally produce richer, higher-fat cream. That's why the color is a genuine deep gold, instead of the pale imitation some brands add artificially. No colorant, just grass, translated through the cow. 2 ingredients, cream and salt. For baking, the extra fat and lower moisture show up in the results. Cakes rise more evenly, cookies crisp properly, and the flavor actually carries through the finished product instead of disappearing into it. The honest trade-off is price. It's noticeably more than a standard supermarket stick, which makes it a tougher sell for everyday toast. For anything where butter is the reason the recipe exists in the first place, it's worth it. Best option number 4, Tillamook. Tillamook has been a Pacific Northwest dairy name since the early 1900s, and the standard it holds across cheese, ice cream, and yogurt carries straight through to its butter. Both the salted and unsalted versions sit just above the 80% floor, and the difference from a minimum standard butter is obvious immediately. It's noticeably creamier, spreads cleanly, melts evenly, and tastes like exactly what it is: cream and salt, nothing hiding behind it. What makes it such a strong everyday pick is where it sits on the spectrum. It's rich enough to taste like real butter without tipping into the intensity of a full European-style cultured butter, which means it works cleanly across a wide range of recipes without overwhelming anything delicate. It costs more than anything on the avoid list, and it will also never leave you disappointed. For daily cooking and baking, this is the answer most households actually need. Best option number 3, Vermont Creamery. If you've never tried cultured butter, this is the one that resets your entire idea of what butter can taste like. Vermont Creamery makes a European-style cultured butter, and the process behind it is genuinely different. Fresh cream ferments before churning, with live cultures introduced and left overnight. During that time, bacteria convert lactose into lactic acid, building a layered flavor that no shortcut or additive can fake. The result tastes like butter, and good yogurt had a quiet collaboration. Tangy in a way that's earned, rich in a way that's immediately obvious. The fat content backs that up, running among the highest available commercially in the US, which gives it a texture that's genuinely velvety. It's earned recognition from cheese and dairy industry groups, and professional bakers who switch to it rarely go back. It ranks third rather than first, purely on practicality. The intensity and the price make it a poor fit for daily use. But for anything where butter is meant to be the star of the dish, nothing on this list touches it. Best option number 2, Plugra. Plugra doesn't try to sell you anything. Plain foil, no bold claims, no story printed anywhere on the wrapper. In a dairy case built entirely around grabbing your attention, this is the one people walk past constantly, and that's a real loss for anyone who skips it. It was developed for professional pastry kitchens, not retail shelves, which is why the standard behind it sits right at the European butter benchmark. It's earned formal recognition from culinary industry groups, and has been a staple in serious kitchens for a long time before quietly showing up in regular grocery stores. The plain butter delivers exactly what professional cooks rely on it for. Better lamination in pastry, more depth in a pan sauce, mashed potatoes that taste noticeably more considered. The spreadable version with sea salt and olive oil might be the most quietly impressive product on this entire list. After everything covered on the avoid side, hexane-processed canola, mono and diglycerides, sodium benzoate, xanthan gum, here's a spread built from cream, olive oil, salt, and natural flavor. 5 ingredients that belong together, doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Every brand on the avoid list loading a spread with a dozen additives made a choice. Plugra made the opposite one, and the product is better for it. Best option number 1, Kerrygold. When this conversation comes up, it tends to end here. Kerrygold holds close to a universal reputation as the best-tasting, widely available butter in the country, and there isn't much of a credible counterargument. It starts with sourcing. Irish cows graze outdoors for the vast majority of the year, something Ireland's climate makes possible in a way most dairy regions simply can't match. Grass grows nearly year-round, the land stays green, and the cows eat what they evolved to eat. The effect on the butter is direct and visible before you even open the wrapper. It meets the European fat standard, and it carries a deep, natural gold color that needs no added coloring of any kind. That color comes straight from the grass, through the cow, into the butter. The flavor is unmistakably different from standard American butter. A floral note, a natural sweetness sitting just under the richness without ever feeling heavy. It melts cleanly into whatever you're cooking without overpowering it, and it has enough character that you notice it the moment butter is actually the point of the dish. And Kerrygold proves the exact thing the entire avoid list refuses to admit. The spreadable version, soft, straight from the fridge, is built from 2 ingredients, cream and salt. Nothing else. No emulsifiers, no preservatives, no chemical shortcuts. It manages everything the avoid list claimed required a dozen additives, using only the 2 ingredients butter has always needed. Every brand we walked through today knows a clean, honest product is possible. They're choosing margin over it. Kerrygold made the other choice, and that's exactly why it sits at the top. Here's what the 6 brands that actually held up all have in common. None of them need artificial flavoring, synthetic preservatives, or chemically processed oil to be worth buying. They just need good milk from well-fed cows and a process that doesn't cut corners. The brands on the avoid list aren't failing to reach that bar, they're choosing not to. Next time you're standing in front of that wall of tubs and sticks, you already know what 2 ingredients looks like. Cream and salt is the benchmark. Anything beyond those 2 words is worth a second look, and now you know exactly what that second look might turn up. None of this means you need to spend Kerrygold money on butter for the rest of your life. Nobody's asking you to overhaul your grocery bill overnight. What actually matters is knowing the difference between a genuine budget trade-off and a label built specifically to make you think you're not making one. Buying Challenge because it's what your family's budget allows is a completely reasonable decision. Buying Challenge because you assumed all butter is basically the same thing is the decision this video was made to fix. Same goes for every spread on this list wearing the word butter like a costume. There's nothing wrong with choosing a plant-based spread on purpose. There's something wrong with a label engineered so you don't realize that's what you picked. And if the butter aisle surprised you, wait until you hear what's actually happening in the olive oil section. Because for years, that industry has been running almost the exact same playbook, filling bottles, printing extra virgin on the front, and counting on the fact that most people never look closely enough to notice.